Welcome everyone to the next Purple Ivy Brown Bag Lunch. We're so excited that we're continuing these series during your lunch hour. And today we are so excited to have Anna Denell from Vasakronan and the equally wonderful Eva Nomel from Purple Ivy.
Good to be here again. Good to have you here, Anna.
Thanks for having me.
So lovely to have you. I'm also Christina Amann. I am a sustainability advisor at Purple Ivy. And the whole concept of the brown bag lunch came about because we are sitting at home having lunch, many of us, as the workplace has changed. And we decided that we would take this to the virtual format. Our focus today is inspired by others, working with stakeholders when sustainability matters. And before we kickstart fully, I did want to clarify this part about sustainability matters in the title and the topic of this webinar. Because yes, we see that sustainability is going mainstream, but it's still a journey and at many different points for many different people. So when we talk about sustainability matters in terms of stakeholders, we're looking how different sectors go beyond working in silos, find ways to bring their unique expertise and collaborate to create a bigger, more positive and sustainable impact. And with that said, I am delighted to introduce our speakers today a little bit more formally, not very long, I promise you. So we have Anna Denell, who leads the sustainability for Vasakronan, which is the biggest property company in Sweden. And in her words, when we talked about stakeholder engagement, is no man is an island. It is important and unavoidable to engage with your stakeholders. I also want to introduce Eva Nomel, who is the partner and founder of Purple Ivy. And when I also asked a similar question to Eva about stakeholder, her response was stakeholder engagement gives an opportunity to achieve things that would not be possible without.
Right.
So good. So we're going to go straight into the next section. And also, for those that are trickling into the studio, our wonderful, wonderful audience, please don't hesitate to comment and question in the comment section. I don't know if it's there or below or left or right. The audience, you see it much better than I do at the moment. But do send your questions in, and we will try our best to answer them. So in the first part that I'm asking Anna and Eva to talk about is focused on stakeholders, collaboration, and process. And my first question to you, Anna, is why are stakeholders important to you? And what does it mean to engage with them?
Well, first of all, I think I need to express that at Vasakronan, we have an ambition to run our business in a sustainable way. So we don't actually have a sustainability work. And to be able to truly deliver on that ambition, to run our business in a sustainable way, we need to make sure that it is actually sustainable from any angle. And therefore we need to investigate how we impact the environment, people, and society while trying to run our business and earn our money. And therefore, we've identified 6 very important stakeholders from that perspective, and that we make sure to have a dialogue with them to make sure that for each year our business becomes more and more sustainable.
And maybe you talked about this identification process. I'm going to, and we can have a conversation back and forth, Anna and Eva. If I turn it to you, Eva, how do you identify stakeholders and that are important to your company? So is there, because sometimes I think people think, oh, stakeholders, that's easy. We'll choose one over there, here and there. And tell me a little bit about the process part.
I think it's more and more normal to actually engage with stakeholders, because nowadays it's a clear requirements on stakeholder dialogues from reporting guidelines and ISO standards. So a lot of companies do hold stakeholder interviews where they reach out and ask them what is important for you based on what we're doing. And I think because we do help a lot of companies with performing stakeholder dialogues, it's kind of a part of the materiality process that we perform. And often is the case that the companies do get surprised by the benefit that they get out of it if you do it in a more structured and in a more process-based, planned way. If you perform the interviews in more structured. So it makes a big difference if you plan and set up the stakeholder discussions with a more future perspective, and that you also kind of clarify what are the strategic areas that we want to discuss, so that you have done like a pre-work before you go in and have the discussion. If you do that, you can really find interesting future stakeholder partners to drive sustainability towards a new dimension, I would say. But what you need is that you need to base the interviews on the future, not on today. And you also need to prepare what are the focus of the interviews, so that you just don't go in with a blank paper. And then even though you want to hear and you need to be good at listening to the stakeholder, you need also to be good at steering what you want to discuss, because you should discuss areas which are of interest for you, for example, at Vasakronan. And
Anna, with what Eva is saying, you just said you'd identified 6 stakeholders. Could you talk a little bit about this work that you've undertaken and the importance of collaboration? So one, the process part of identifying, and why this collaboration with these 6 stakeholders has been important for Vasakronan in your sustainability work.
Mm-hmm. Well, the process to identify them is based on the principle that to be able to run our business, we need resources, or we need maybe legislation, we need money, we need to borrow money, and we need money that our owners invest. So it's actually based on that. What do we need to be able to run our business? And then what we ask them is, okay, so if it's supposed to be sustainable, our business, what do we need to improve? And what was the
why? It's okay, because I do this all the
Doesn't
time.
matter.
I ask questions, and some people ask me questions. I'm like, what was the second or third point? So please do interrupt me. The second part of this bigger question was the importance of collaboration. So I would say your personal take on the importance of collaboration, and then also the importance of collaboration. You did mention a little bit about with Vasakronan.
I would say it's key. Probably it is for most businesses, I believe. But of course, it might depend on what kind of business you are running. So in our case, it's if you apply a value chain perspective with the upstream stakeholders and downstream stakeholders. But for instance, we have a very ambitious climate target, and that is to become climate neutral in the whole value chain until 2030. And that will not be possible to achieve if we are not working together with both architects, consultants, building contractors, sometimes also legislation issues as well. Because something that might be better for the climate is actually prohibited today. For instance, when it comes to designing timber buildings, we might actually, which is of course better for the climate than concrete and steel buildings, but we might see obstacles there in terms of legislation. And therefore, I would say, as I said in the beginning, it's key. And without this collaboration, we would not be able to deliver on, I would say, any of our sustainability targets.
I think that's a really good way to move into the next part of our discussion, and that is about sustainability integration. So I continue with you, Anna, because I have you in front of me, is how, and I'm going to do one question, not two in one. And how have you seen engaging with your stakeholders? How has that, and you talked about the segue from the collaboration, but how has engaging with your stakeholders strengthened your sustainability engagement? And can you talk about an impact or an example that is relevant?
Yeah, I think one interesting example is the way we are now collaborating with our lenders. In November 2013, we issued the world's first corporate green bond. And at that time, we were already in the bond market, but we actually didn't have very much conversation or not to mention collaboration with those investors, i.e. our lenders. But after we had issued this green bond, and now many green bonds, we see that the investors really want to know how we are spending the money that we funded through the green bonds. And they want us to report back on it. And that is a leverage internally when it comes to actually higher our ambitions and to engage with our employees, which is another very important stakeholder group.
Yeah.
Because nowadays they can relate to their day-to-day work with working on energy improvements in the buildings or cooperating with tenants to actually make or to inspire our tenants to recycle their waste in a better way or something. So we see that by cooperating with one stakeholder group, we actually achieve or we can deliver better on several targets, or which kind of relates to other stakeholder groups.
I really like that example.
Yeah, and I like it. It creates a bit of like a common language.
It does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's
really, sorry, just the way that you kind of lift up the engagement of your employees as a stakeholder group. I really like that way of looking at it.
And Eva, with that, could you talk a little bit about when we talk about sustainability integration? Talk a little bit more in that form of stakeholder engagement and how that contributes to sustainability integration.
Well,
that common language.
Yeah, I think that engaging with stakeholders or collaboration or partnering or whatever, what is really, really important when you do that, whether it's with an external stakeholder or it's an internal stakeholder, is that you have an ambition or a goal towards what you want to solve or what you want to achieve. Actually, I think a lot of collaborations, or when you talk to some companies and you ask them, well, what kind of engagement do you have with other stakeholders to be able to solve something? And then they come up with an example that they've joined some networks of sustainability managers or whatever. And to me, that's not that's a way of getting inspired and sharing of ideas, but it doesn't have a common goal. It doesn't have a common solution towards what you're trying to achieve. And so you should be careful not to mix the two of them. So to me, a stakeholder engagement where you are having a real collaboration, it's super important that you have a common goal or an ambition towards what you want to achieve. And you should, and in the example that you took, Anna, you should have different areas where you can contribute. I mean, how can Vasakronan contribute, and how can your lenders contribute, and how does this leverage together, and so that you can see that picture. I think that's super important for me. And also, I think what is important when you set up an engagement of collaboration with stakeholders is that you have that you actually have a setup of how you meet and how often do you meet, and that it's clear that you actually can receive some kind of result, that you can see it together. And both parties should gain something from the collaboration. I think that's also something that you need to see when you have a collaboration that's really working.
And then we go to the last part, and to the audience, do start. I see that the questions are trickling in, and I'll get to them. I do have 1 or 2 questions left. So for the rest of the audience, do post your questions, and I will promise I will get to them. So if we talk about the last part, it's about opportunities, challenges, and inspiration. Eva, if you're continuing on what you were just saying, how does the process contribute to a good partnership, and how it inspires to engage? So, you know, when you talk about opportunities and challenges around stakeholder engagement, how does it contribute to maybe a stronger partnership, and how does it inspire?
Yeah, I think the challenge within a real collaboration, a good partnership, is to get the right focus. It might be, you know, a nice collaboration, but it doesn't create the value that you expected. I think that's a challenge. That's the biggest challenge, probably. I think that often happens when you don't have that structure around your collaboration, and that I believe that you need to set up if you really want to get things out of it. On the other hand, I think the opportunities are huge if you set up these kind of collaborations or partnerships with stakeholders. And I think that you can create a lever that would not be possible to achieve alone. There are some really great examples of collaborations when it comes to, well, of course, environmental issues, but also on societal issues, and creating new business opportunities or technology innovations. I think there are great examples.
And Anna, if we turn that question over to you, the opportunities you've seen, obviously the challenges you've seen, and the inspiration that you get. But if you could give maybe a concrete or practical example for the audience on where you've seen the opportunities and the challenges.
Well, one really important stakeholder group for us is, of course, our tenants, customers or clients, however you put it. And I think maybe we see both a large challenge, but also an opportunity there. When it comes to the most important thing for us in the relation with our tenants in terms of sustainability is actually to inspire our tenants to use less square meters. Which is kind of, it could be bad for the business, of course, which everyone realizes. But on the other hand, we've experienced that when we start to talk about this with our tenants, we actually get a stronger relationship with them, because a supplier that dares to tell you, you should buy less from us, is actually, I believe so, is a supplier that you tend to have stronger, that you kind of believe it in a better way than somebody who only tries to sell more.
Yeah. But you've been sticking out your neck several times, haven't you, within Vasakronan towards your tenants on sustainability matters?
Yes, actually, we started to sign green leases more than 10 years ago. It was back in 2010, and that was another kind of challenge to actually embed clauses in the lease agreement that they need to behave in a certain way. And there was definitely internally a strong
hesitation.
about this. But what we actually realized, what they wanted us to kind of challenge them on these topics. So it actually, once again, it strengthened the relationship between us and our customers.
And with that lease agreement that you started off with, is it so that you feel that they're less surprised today about it than they were before?
Yes, and actually, since 2010, we've stopped signing green leases, and we actually included these clauses into the standard lease agreement. So nowadays, you get it whether you want it or not.
And that's a perfect example of sustainability integration.
Definitely.
Yes, because after a few years, we kind of asked ourselves, why do we have separate green leases? Shouldn't all our lease agreements be green?
Yeah.
I have a question here to Anna, and I'm sorry to the person because I cannot pronounce your name properly, or if this is an organization. Rolly Verify has a question, and he or she asks, how much has changed in the past few years in the balance between stakeholder capitalism and shareholder capitalism when this work enters strategy work? So the difference between stakeholder and shareholder, and I guess their influence in your sustainability strategy, or your the combination of sustainability and business strategy.
Yeah, I would say stakeholder is the more important part.
And the thinking behind that is?
But on the other hand, what we clearly see is that by trying to make our business more sustainable, it also becomes more profitable. So there is no conflict between delivering on all stakeholders' expectations and shareholders.
And shareholder is, of course, one of the stakeholders.
Definitely, yes, of course, it's one of the things. Yes.
And as I'm asking the question, it's a question in a question. So the questions that you've been asked over the years, have they changed drastically? So what would have been some of the questions at the starting point, and what is very different with the questions today?
The question of what? Of what you're asking the stakeholders, or what? What they ask you?
What they ask from us.
What questions they ask you. So, for example, are the questions they asked you 10 years ago very different to the questions they asked you today?
With the example of our lenders, it's definitely because they didn't even ask questions 10 years ago, I would say.
So that's a big difference.
Yes. In terms of tenants' expectation, we see more questions. I would say the amount of questions, or the amount of tenants asking the same questions, is increasing. 10 years back, it was just a few of them asking us questions about sustainability, or asking or having expectations. But nowadays, almost everyone, I would say. But besides from that, I don't think it has changed very much.
And Eva, in your time working on stakeholder engagement, what have you seen as part of the journey since the start and today?
Well, I see there is a lot more reaching out for having engagement, for example, which wasn't that usual 5-10 years ago. I also see that there are new groups that are kind of sticking their heads out and want to be part of the engagements. Well, for example, society and politicians, or when it comes up north, that you want to see the city working together and things like that. So I think there are newcomers on the cooperation arena, maybe.
And with regards to it, have the partnerships or these collaborations changed over the years as well? So not only the questions, have the way you work with them changed over the years?
Well, I think that it has become that you see a big difference when you do it more structured, so that you cannot. I mean, a partnership or a collaboration, it doesn't really do any good for either parties if you just meet a couple of times. You need to do it in a more structured way, and I think that's the big change probably. To have clear goals of what you want to achieve, and to clarify what kind of benefits you can get from each other, and also that you have someone driving it, so that you don't just let it go, so that you achieve some difference in it.
And Anna, what example have you seen that these partnerships or collaborations with your stakeholders have changed? And what do you have an example of a really good partnership, and why it's good?
Well, one example is how we are working with the large contractor firms. Usually we have a project, and then we ask for bids on on that project, and we get bids, and then we evaluate them and we choose a contractor. But since this climate target that we have now to become climate neutral 2030 is so important, and also we really need to focus on construction work because that's where we have the heaviest part. We've invited some large contracting firms to, without bidding on a certain or specific project, in a more dialogue way, describe what they can deliver now and what they plan to be able to deliver within the next 5 or 10 years.
It's really exciting.
And that makes it easier for us to actually work on our demand or what we ask for them in the specific bids that we will place on them, or that we will ask for the coming years.
So you let them in much earlier in your processes.
Yes.
We have a question here. Is the circular economy making you look to new partners for materials?
Yeah, that's another thing that I was thinking about, and I actually realized that maybe one important stakeholder group that we've kind of forgot about it's actually our competitors, and it's relevant in terms of our ambition in terms of circularity, because we consume a lot of interior building materials with almost endless fit out inside the buildings for the different tenants' needs. And we know that those kind of fit out works both produce a lot of waste, construction waste, that it's actually that material that we are wasting is not being wasted because it has come to its end of life in terms of technical issues. It's wasted because it has got the wrong color, or it's not the right type of material. And we also know, on the other hand, that at the same time, we or any of our competitors are wasting that type of material, and somebody else is actually still buying that kind of material. So we see that there is a possibility to recircle or circulate this kind of material internally, not only at Vasakronan, but if we do it on a larger scale together with our competitors, we can deliver on the circularity targets much faster.
And it's so interesting that you include your competitors, and that just really showcases how stakeholders can really have quite a breadth, and sustainability is the one thing that can really tie odd bedfellows together.
Exactly.
Yes.
We are wrapping up, and I'm looking at our time here, and I know we often say that this half an hour goes by really, really quickly. Before we head off to actually have our lunch. Eva, do you have one last inspiring sentence or sentences when we talk about stakeholder engagement, sustainability integration now and tomorrow?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, it's like a big puzzle. And if you don't get the engagement between the stakeholders together, you're missing the last piece.
I like the puzzle, and because it creates that one piece. Yeah, we're all little, and it all goes together. And Anna, do you have some last words for the audience as we wrap up our brown bag lunch session?
No, I don't think so. After Eva's super intelligent remark, I think I will leave it to
Sorry.
Well,
you can join me on that one.
I will also join you on that one. And I think one of the things that I really take out from what you said, Anna, is how throughout your stakeholders, sustainability has created that common language, that common vision and way of working, even if it's odd bedfellows as well. It's been a very interesting half an hour. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you to both you, Anna and Eva.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Christina.
Thank you. Thank you all around. And we will be back in 2 weeks' time for our next brown bag lunch. And in the meantime, for the rest of you in the audience, thank you for your time, for listening in. It's always really lots of fun to be talking about these topics. Take care and see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.